Howdy folks, and welcome back to making a Fakemon region. I just punched the desk for some reason, hopefully you didn't hear that. This is the show where I make a fictional land based around all the cultures of the world coming into one, and then I populate that fictional region with even more fictional, weird, cartoony monsters. And I explain them to you whilst I draw them. Okay? Okay. Last episode, I essentially made a long episode going through all my previous Fakemon I've made so far, and explained all the new types, and the change types, and things like that. And the episode before that, I made an entirely new pixel type. So things have been a little bit hectic, let's say. There hasn't necessarily been a specific theme to go for these episodes. And we need theming! We need egg whites to keep the structure of this series intact. And I haven't really mentioned a map of this region yet, and most people do that. Well, I should have done mine by now, to be fair. So let's start a new structure to this series. We're going to go on specific locations, what you could possibly find within this region, and essentially fill them all with inhabitants. To the tropical beaches, to the gloomy caves, to the lushes of jungles. This region has it all. Well, probably. I haven't drawn it yet. I've been planning it out like crazy, but I haven't actually done anything yet. But it will eventually, probably. Not only does that help play into the aspect of how I wanted to include the fact that each monster specifically evolved into that environment. I mentioned that a few episodes ago, but now it's so long ago. But it can also give you just an idea of how dumb and silly this region will end up being. Because although I'm basing it off real world traditions and cultures, at the end of the day, this is a very cartoon world. But anyway, so this episode, we're going to be focusing on caves. Now, I haven't planned much about this region's map yet, but I always had the idea that the player always started in a mining town. That was an idea I had for ages. For those who don't know, I kind of started this series like 2 years ago, but gave up after like doing 20 Mons, so that's why not all of them are speed drawings, because I drew them way before, but either way. Since you know me, I like to change the norm a little bit, I didn't want the first early root forest to be a forest. I like the idea of it being like a cave because, well, you start in a mining town, you gotta explore through caves. That's what inspired Mons like Froxy and Carbon, and obviously the early root bird, Minimin and its evolutions. However, we're not done with Mons in the cave. We've got an entire ecosystem to explore, so let's jump into it. Starting with a Mon that didn't even evolve to be in the caves and just kind of appeared there. Oops. This is Impastone, or Impastone, a mix between impassive, meaning expressionless, and stone. Yes, I know it is just a stone, let me explain him. Now, a couple hundred, or maybe even thousands years ago, is when humans were still kind of living in their ancient civilizations, they tried to crack immortality. They wanted to find a way to live forever. And well, one way what they found was by inscribing ancient scribbles on certain stones, what essentially allowed them to, well, after they died, it would grant them a second chance at life. One of, essentially. And that's what Impastone is. It's a sentient rock. The people got what they wanted, but at a price. They get to live forever, but they're also in a rock. So, yeah, it's meant to play on the whole monkey's paw thing where be careful what you wish for, because you can't fight immortality. Plus, this is a redraw of one of my really old Fakemons, what was literally just a rock, so I wanted to give it a bit of at least a bit more identity than literally being a rock, because that was the point of it. I'll show you what they all used to look like once we finish the evolutionary line. Speaking of which, let's evolve it. Now, although the rock is alive, it's not the rock itself. The rock is simply acting as a shell with the actual human soul inside, empowering it using its psychic abilities. Its third sense, if you will. It's not moving or anything, yet it's able to move the stone using its mentality abilities. And well, over time, the soul inside gets more and more, jiggity. It needs to break out, so that's exactly what it starts to do. It starts to form outside the rock and crack out of it like a carbonated egg. Well, not carbonated. Carbon is rocks, but carbonated is for fizzy drinks. How weird. Yeah, but anyway, the evolution, Immortal, a mix between Immortal and Tomb, because although it is immortal, the rock is now more of a tomb for this soul to be trapped in, although it is just attempting to break out, which it is doing. The runes on its body glowing bright, using all of its psychic energy to try and burst out. Let's let it break out fully. So I guess I'll show you the original evolutionary lines, the ones what I drew like 5 years ago. Here they are, basking all their terrible glory. Why did I think it would be funny to literally draw a rock, only to give it legs? I don't remember, although I did like the idea of it being a rock egg, essentially, with something cracking outside, and that's essentially what it became. However, for this one, I wanted to make it look, actually, not like it was made 5 years ago. I wanted to use the same principle of it being a noodly pink monster. I just wanted to show that I have at least tried to grow in the past like 5 years. And I guess that's the message of this line, is that, well, you know, things change over time, the idea of immortality changes, your physical body will change. Probably not to the point where you'll be a human rock, then a pink noodly thing, but, you know, everything changes, and so does my art style, so that's why I brought it back. I wanted to give it at least a purpose of why there's something cracking out the stone. And you might be thinking, why isn't this a ghost type if it's a spirit? Well, I feel like it's not necessarily a ghostly spirit, it's a psychic spirit. It's engraved to bring its, you know, it's a soul inside of it, but it's being powered by its mental energy, what fused into it, you know? The soul left its old body into the rock, but it's more of the mind rather than the soul, if that makes sense, right? Right. I'm gonna be honest, most of these monsters this episode aren't gonna be 100% as thought out of, because most of them, if not more or less all of the base forms, were drawn years ago when I didn't really have this notion of having everything inspired by something. You know, I just wanted to make funny little monsters, and now that I'm redrawing them, I'm trying my best to, you know, retcon a bunch of reasons into them, so not all of them are going to be as good as others, but hopefully it's not necessarily terrible. But either way, this is Chi Stone. Chi meaning life energy, and stone, it's a life stone. Now when I'm comparing it to its original design, I didn't realize how darker I made it, like, huh, weird. So here's the 3 stones, empowered by mental powers. Let's go on to an animal what actually lives in these caves and have done for years. Well, actually evolved to live in the caves, not just because they got monkey poured into stones. But either way, bats. If you didn't notice from the thumbnail, or you just don't know in caves and Pokemon games, bats are a thing, okay? So after making a mining bird, I wanted to make a bat, what perhaps helped out in some capacity with that mining. And for those people who've watched this video who've got a good memory, you'll remember that in the Minimin video, I did mention that the final evolution, Indymin, did have a type of mold on its hard hat head, what helped glow in the dark so it could see. And I also mentioned that there's a Batmon with a similar concept. And there is another Fakemon what I've got, well I'm not going to show you yet, I'll save that for another episode. Well, his gimmick was, he also had a little headlight, but he made the light out of this luminescent fungus or mold what he found in the caves. And since this is also a minor Pokemon, I thought, let's have a cute little connection where they both use the same type of mold. And well, here we go, here's the bat, Identabat. Again, similar to Indymin, the bat has a mold on its head what glows in the dark so it helps it see. It's like a little hard hat. It's also got a weird swirl on its stomach, what's also believed to be a sort of mold. It's a bit of a dirty bat. Its wings don't even work. It does have a bright red nose though, what glows. So, you know, they can communicate to other Identibats and perhaps even mining birds by beeping it. So it doesn't necessarily mine itself, but it likes to help out the other people who do mine and the birds who mine by, you know, showing lights, you know, helping people light the way. Plus, those who've seen my channel long enough to know my other characters, you'll probably realise that this is somewhat similar to another character that I've drawn, unrelated to Fakemon in every way, Tabat, the drawn badly bat. And for reasons I won't go on and on about explaining here, I did like the idea of someone being inspired by other characters that I've made. Wow, my voice is going down, down, down. I do apologise, folks, I'm kind of recovering still from being ill. I'm always ill, I guess, now. That's my personality trait. But anyway, yeah, I like the idea that having some mons inspired by my other characters, and well, this bat is inspired by this bat, which is what the name comes from, Identabat, identical to bat. Although it's not identical in any way. I like how different but similar it is, you know? But anyway, let's evolve it. Now again, this bat was drawn years ago, so I didn't really have any idea of what to evolve it into, so I had to, you know, do a little bit of retconning, doing a little bit of thinking of what to do, and I had an idea. More mold. When doing some research into real-life bats, I realised that they do actually serve a surprising purpose, what you wouldn't think. They spread pollen. Although the stereotype is that bats are always in caves, I'm pretty sure most of them are actually in forests. Although I'm not fully sure how they managed to do it, but they spread the pollen of fruit flowers to spread, you know, more fruit plants so they can eat the fruit from the plants. It's quite interesting, and they get covered in pollen sometimes, and it's kind of cute. So in this cave system, instead of plants they're spreading, it's, well, more glowing fungi. Since they're already covered in, you know, glowing mold on their head, it goes around the cave, you know, rubbing mold, glowing funguses and mold on its body, so that when it treks around the cave, it drops, you know, little mold seeds, or whatever mold grows on, and allows the caves to be more illuminated. Not only does this help miners know where they're going, it also, helps a bunch of other animals what eat the fungi. It's a helpful little bat monster, what is also now covered in fungus. Especially because, well, now the mold kind of grows over its eyes a bit, it needs to be around glowing things to really see where it's going. So it's got loads of mold on itself now. It's got a type of mold what grows is with root claws on the tip of its fingers. It's got seeds all over its wings. It's got a glowy nose and tail, what I mentioned from its previous evolution. And now it's got a giant blooming blue mushroom glowing on its head as a little track light so it can help see where it's going. And it's got pink little petals things glowing on its head as well. How cute. I also wanted to break the norm of, cave monsters being all dark, gloomy and rocky. So I wanted one to be just all bright and mouldy and kind of grim, but still lovely and colourful. Which is perfect for a cartoon world. Plus it also gives me a good reason to make the bat not fly, which is, a twist because most bats do fly, so having one not fly is kind of a unique thing, I suppose. Plus it's, meant to be a Tabat-related thing, and Tabat doesn't fly. It's too busy solving crimes. So there you have it. Chilotera, a mix between Chiroptera, the scientific classification of bats, I believe, and Illuminate, Chilotera. It was going to originally be Chiluminatera, but I realised that was a bit too long and a bit of a mouthful just to say, so Chilotera. And if you liked Bat's design and want to see it in an old video where he finds a ghost, feel free to check out the Drawn Lonely video. It is a bit spoopy though. So, slight warning, but if you want to check it out, please feel free to. Enough plugging, next mon. Lizards. Well, amphibians. Reptile. Scaly things. Well, aren't actually scaly, because they're sprite art. Let's start from the beginning. Here is Electric, a mix between electric and eft, which means baby newt. So despite what you're thinking, this isn't actually a newt. This is inspired by several different amphibians and lizards. The reason why, I drew this guy like 2 years ago, and when I got back to this design for this episode, I could not for the life of me remember what it was actually meant to be. I knew it was meant to be a mix of frogs and newts, because it's meant to be a bit of a tadpole baby newt thing, but I didn't really know what to evolve it into, because I wasn't sure what direction I was originally going to go into. So I got the blender out, and I got a bunch of lizards and amphibians, and threw them all in. And that's what this line more or less is, although it's definitely more obviously more lizards than others, and it's just kind of a fantasy fictional lizard monster anyway, but either way. It was also inspired by electric eels. I forgot to mention that, which is a fish, I think, because it's electric. I like the idea that it likes to jump and splash around in puddles and zap other fish for, as a joke. It's not harmful. It's too small to really do any harm. It is just a little zap, just for fun. So yeah, a fun little mud skipper, which is a fish as well, so that's thrown in there as well, I suppose. Let's evolve it. So when giving it an evolution, I didn't know what direction I wanted to go into. I wanted to go into a froggy newt thing, but at the time of making this, I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it a 2-stage or a 3-stage. I ended up making it a 3-stage, so I thought this would make the middle stage before a frog thing. So again, I wanted to get a few other lizards to just chuck it in there, because why not? This is meant to be, the point of it is that it is just a dumb, silly lizard thing made up of a bunch of different lizard things. I thought it'd be fun to instead just focus on one animal to perhaps try and include little aspects of different animals. These include parts from the Bolitoglossa, I think I'm pronouncing that right, the mushroom-tongued salamander, which is, I believe, the fastest lizard alive, because it's an electric type. I wanted to include something like that in there. The Chinese giant salamander, and the olm, human fish, frogs, axolotls, the lot. I did also realise that Quagsire was also inspired by the Chinese giant salamander, so I also took this as a challenge of taking another animal what inspired a Pokemon and going a completely different direction, because that's always fun to me where you see two inspirations make a completely different design. It's always fun to see that, right? I also didn't know what to put on the back, because I wanted to keep its like tadpole thrill thing, its tadpole sail, but also since it's electric, I guess I made a little sparky and hairy. I like to think that it glows in the dark and sparks electric every now and again. I thought that'd be a fun little thing. But anyway, yes, this is Amphimud, a mix between amphibian, muddled, because it's a bit dopey, and, well, mud, because it's always in, marshy caves and a lot. Again, I was going to call it Amphimuddled, but the name seemed a bit too long, so Amphimud, at least for now. I might change him in the future, who knows. But yeah, he's just a giant, dumb little salamander. I love him. When I say dumb, I just mean he's a little dopey, but he's got a lot of love, and I love him. Let's make him even bigger and dumber. Again, I say this in a lot of episodes I do, but I'm not that good at drawing, okay? I'm confident in my skills enough, but I know what I'm not very good at drawing, and if it's not a badly drawn bat or a stickman, I'm probably not going to be very good at drawing it. So I struggled a little bit on this guy's design, but I'm very happy with the final result either way, so hey-ho. Again, I wanted to give it a bit more frog-like design originally, where I wanted to make it look like it was a frog ready to pounce, but I realised I had troubles making its arms and head fit, so I just made it look like standing up. It's got, tiny little legs, chonky feet, big tail. I just made it a giant, kind of generic lizard monster, I suppose you could say. Which is fine, there's always room for some generic Mons. I still love him at the end of the day. And like I always say to myself, I couldn't draw a giant lizard monster this time like a week ago, and now I can. Even if it's not necessarily a good one. I also didn't mention this for Amphibian, but I drew like blue electric patterns on its skin, just to show off that it is electric type. But now that it's evolved, I like the idea that it's all just loose blue strings, all scattering around its body because, well, he doesn't really have much control over his electric powers. In fact, they're so dopey they tend to forget they have electric powers. So it leads them to zap themselves half the time, which is fine, but they live in marshy, watery areas of caves, so they do end up shocking others around them as well. But other than that, they are more or less harmless. They are just giant dopey lizards. It's funny because I keep saying they're lizards, even though I 100% know they're not. They're amphibians, I think. I assume they have gills. I would imagine them being able to swim in water freely. Yeah, but either way. Maybe it loses its amphibian qualities when it grows up. I haven't really thought about it much yet. Another thing I wanted to give it some colour changes because, well, although I like the yellow and brown, I wanted to mix it up a bit because lizards do change their appearance when they evolve, like as in actually go under metamorphosis from a tadpole to an adult. Again, not lizards, it's amphibians, but still. So I wanted to give it a bit more of a diverse colour palette, which I thought was nice. And I was also thinking about what role it plays in the caves, because, you've got the birds mining, the bats placing fungi everywhere. What you got the lizards doing? Well, you got the lizards eating the fungi, which, before you say anything, does not make them bad. They are very good boys. See, the problem with the bats is, although they're happy to spread fungi grows at an exponentially quick rate, especially in damp, muddy caves. So sometimes they can grow too many glowing fungi, which not only swamps the caves, making it extremely difficult to go through, it also perhaps, brightens it up too much for, things to live comfortably there, and it also drains up a bunch of minerals and water from the ground, which makes it harder for other animals to live there as well. And since one of the lizards help inspire this guy is called the mushroom tongue lizard, salamander, it does make sense that this guy eats enough fungi, just enough to level out the playing field so everyone gets an equal share of lighting, water, doesn't swarm anything, he just eats a good enough amount, keeps it all balanced. Such a good boy, isn't he? He's also got a bright blue mouth from eating all the fungi, like when you lick like blue ice cream and your tongue goes blue. So here we have mycophysid, a mix between mycophagist, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is the word to say they collect mushrooms, or eat mushrooms, I should say, which is, a term for mushroom eater, which they are, and lizard, mycophysid, because even though it's not a lizard, it's an amphibian, it's still a giant dumb lizard. Anyway, so on to our last two Mons this episode. I like the idea of there being rock monsters, right? As in, they lay their eggs underground, and they spend years forming underground until they're ready to burst out. If you've seen Steven Universe, very similar to Steven Universe. However, just like how minerals also form when they're under intense pressure underground, I like the idea that when forming, these rock monsters spill out some nutrients in themselves, which allow crystals to form over their body, so when they do burst out, they're covered in crystals and they're a little bit awkward and weird. Here we have Wakiwa, a mix between the Japanese words for rock and young. We'll get into the Japanese bit a bit later. Plus, whack also sounds like how a child would try to say rock. So yeah, it's just a young little rock monster covered in gems. It's a little confused, doesn't know really what it's doing. Let's evolve it. Now this idea started for me when I had the idea of essentially a rock farmer, where they had a rock hoe for an arm, where they would, they would plough the underground, plant their rock seeds, and allow them to make more rock babies that burst out the ground. I don't know why, I thought that was fun, and with the whole gem thing, I had this idea that maybe they grew like crystal plants or something. I don't know why, I just dumb fictional cartoon world, I thought it would be funny. However, I like the idea that in the last coming years, like in the last 100 or so years, or whenever humans started mining, they started, destroying the land what these farmers had. So, this whole softcore nice farmer wasn't cutting it anymore. They were losing a battle. So, they had to get a little bit tougher. You see, although the mini-mins and indie-mins and everyone, although they mine the mountains, they could strike deals with these farmers, you know, never to mine certain things, to keep the nutrients intact. Humans, however, at least back then, weren't very aware of how much damage they were causing to the environment around them, so they would just entirely destroy mountains, empty out caves, destroy all the minerals and take them all for themselves. These farmers needed the minerals to plant more, you know, stone babies, yet the humans were taking them all for themselves. So like I said, they had to go mean. They're now relatively hostile towards humans and enjoy roughhousing with each other, and also just being a badass. Ever since they got a sense of the danger, they got obsessed with it, and that's all they're doing. Problem is, they keep cracking their stony bodies, what they have to repair with more minerals and crystals. They've got a genuine, meh, I don't care attitude with them. They don't really care about much things, although they do find other living things, other than humans, extremely cute. I haven't really mentioned size in this episode yet, but these rock warrior things are extremely huge and extremely powerful. Not huge, but like, I haven't really thought about it, but large. And they find the other cave animals cute, and well, you know, they try and go out their way to defend them if they ever need help, especially from human activity. So they've kind of gained this nickname of Superhero of the Caves. Although it's not a cape they're wearing at the back, it's meant to be like how in, you know, in animes with, like, you know, gang member females, they've got like the weird jacket thing over their, they're not wearing it, but it's like hanging back. It's like a cape, but not. That was the idea I was kind of going with there. Which isn't the main reason why it's got a Japanese name either. It's also just because, well, like I said, it's an anime thing as well. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a real life thing, but it's a very, you know, since it's a cartoon world, if they're going to do that there, it's like an anime thing, right? But it's also just because, well, in Japan, they were meant to be farmers. Japan's a very agricultural place. And again, it's going back to that whole mascot, badass characters, you know, giant rock lady. Amazing. I'm not saying that's exclusively a Japanese thing. However, it's I saw a few traits similar to Japanese culture. So, Japanese names. Plus, the Japanese gem, or at least the gem that represents Japan is, I believe, the jade, which can be both green and red. So, you know, there's another tie in there for you. But yeah, back to the Mon itself. They're incredibly hard to tame. It's very hard to gain their trust because, well, you know, you're the reason why they're all badass in the first place, and although they enjoy it now, they're not happy that what it took for them to get this far. But if you can show them that you truly do care about them and that you're a nice person who wouldn't destroy caves, then yeah, they'd have no choice but to respect you. And it is a respect situation, I reckon. You know, there's a lot of cases of this Mon just, you know, leaving its trainer because it just lost respect for it and it didn't want to be commanded by it anymore, so it just ran away. So you got to treat them with respect and they'll respect you. But anyway, this is Kikanoka, a mix between the two Japanese words, priceless and farmer, and, well, I threw kick in there as well because it's got long legs. I thought, well, you know, I'll throw an extra word in there just to make it a bit more, instead of just two words, Kikanoka, there you go, sorted. What do you think of its colours? Because I really struggled on them when I first did them, and I'm still not fully sure if I like them or not. I mean, I do like them, but I'm not sure if they could be better. I'm probably thinking a bit too much about it, and its face, again, I'm probably thinking too much into it, but either way, there you go. So there you have it, a bunch of cave monsters. I'm going to admit, this episode was a bit of a weak one, especially when it came to inspirations and designs. I promise you I will fix that in the next few episodes. It was just because, again, I'm still kind of going through the designs I made a few years ago, and they didn't really have any reasons, and I didn't want to just throw away them because I did like their designs, so again, I had to retcon a lot, as I mentioned, but hopefully as, you know, more episodes come out and I make more original Mons anyway, they'll have much better inspirations. I promise you. I would say next episode would be about making monsters for a beach environment, but that's going to have to wait, folks. Because at the time of recording this episode, we got Spooky Month coming up, and I've got a couple of fun episodes planned for that, so hopefully we're going to see some spooky Mons, and some Halloween-inspired ones, and some other traditions what are around this time of year, because it's the whole world, isn't it? And Halloween isn't all over the world, so hopefully we'll learn some fun facts and not get spooked. Unless, again, you want to check out the journal videos. But either way, folks, enjoy the rest of your day, or if you're off to bed, have sweetest of dreams. Let me know if you like any of these designs, or if you wouldn't. Are they team-worthy, or just say? But either way, folks, I already did the outro, so enjoy the rest of your day, if you're off to bed, have the sweetest of dreams, and I'll see you all in a bit. Toodaloo, bye. Can't do the high pitch, throat's too sore. Bye, folks.